And recording is now in progress. So there we go. Okay, hello, and thank you for joining us today. We are celebrating National Poetry Month. We are celebrating LBGTQ rights and awareness. And I'm so excited for today. So welcome to our third installment of Hearing Marginalized Voices Through Poetry. I'm so proud of Kishwaukee College for sponsoring this. Thank you to the Diversity Committee. Thank you to the Gender, Sexuality, and Diversity Committee for helping to co-host this. I'm proud to be a part of this and what we're doing here and the work that we're doing. So without further ado, I would just like to start as we celebrate National Poetry Month and we celebrate LBGTQ awareness and rights. I have a poem that I would like to share with you all. This poem is called Ripples, and it is dedicated to all of my sinner poets and proud weirdos. Let they who are without sin cast the first stone. We are not alone. This stone is skipping across the universe, sending ripples like gravitational waves that pave the ways for creative forces to flow. Far better than just rolling the bones, this stone-thrown ripples always beat the house. Never to be taken for granted, these granite salutations create the foundations that can bring down this Goliath nation of ego towers built on funeral wreath flowers, reminding us that we have the power if we just choose to live it. So don't tell us not to throw our stones just because you need to atone for all of your sins against our humanity. That is the true profanity, trying to pull it all apart instead of bringing us all together. Let us flock like birds so that we can spread the word. We must not let them cull our herd with false prophecy and forced autocracy. They will not block our way. We will have our say. It is time for us to have ourselves a real judgment day. Yes. Let us throw these stones. Let our ripples grow. Tsunami tidal waves that usher in new days of community, culture, poetry, and song. This is what they have feared all along. And thank you for coming. I'm going to share my screen real quick here to start introductions. And welcome to Hearing Marginalized Voices Through Poetry. We are celebrating National Poetry Month and LBGTQ awareness and rights. Come on, there we go. So I just want to point out that perhaps one of the most marginalized and targeted groups in America today is the LBGTQ plus community. And not only is this a blatant disregard for civil rights and basic human rights, this creates a significant and present danger for the youth of this community. According to the Trevor Project, suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people, with LGBTQ youth being 4 times more likely to seriously consider suicide, to make a plan for suicide, and to attempt suicide versus their peers. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is expected to sign, I think at this point he already has, signed Bill 1557, which is a proposed law that supports the Parental Rights in Education bill, and opponents refer to this as the Don't Say Gay bill. The bill prohibits both instruction and classroom discussion of gender identity and sexual orientation. Classroom instruction could mean eliminating books with LGBTQ characters or historical figures, but classroom discussion is broad, and that could discourage a teacher from speaking about gay families with the whole class, even if some of those students have gay parents. And even more concerning is that the bill also targets mental health and counseling services, a place where students often have difficult conversations about gender identity and sexuality, especially if they struggle to talk about these conversations at home. And this is only one example of one bill in one state. Similar bills and laws are stripping away the rights and the very humanity of this population in an ongoing struggle that perpetuates generational trauma. And it is now my very, very proud privilege to introduce our guest today. Kai Coggin is a queer woman of color who knows that Black Lives Matter and is a staunch advocate of queer role models for the youth, often discussing her own struggles from a lack of those very role models for her younger self. She is a teaching artist in poetry with the Arkansas Arts Council and the host of the longest running consecutively weekly open mic series in the country, Wednesday Night Poetry, featured in the New York Times and other prevalent journalistic endeavors. Recently, she was awarded the 2021 Governor's Arts Award and named Best Poet in Arkansas by the Arkansas Times. Her fierce and powerful poetry has been nominated 4 times for the Pushcart Prize, as well as Bettering American Poetry 2015 and the Best of the Net 2016, 2018, and 2019, finally winning that award in 2021. She is the author of this brilliant, brilliant book, Mining for Stardust, as well as Incandescent, Wingspan, and Periscope Heart. She also has a spoken word album called Silhouette, and it is just my ultimate privilege, and I'm proud to introduce my friend and my warrior sister poet, Kai Coggin. Please give it up for Kai Coggin.
Oh, Bear. Thank you so much. That was such a gorgeous introduction. And thank you to Kishwaukee College and everyone involved in bringing these sort of programs to your campus, to the Zoom audience. And thank you, Bear, for all of the work that you've been doing to put these programs together. I'm honored to be here today. I'm going to share some poems, and I'll have room for some discussion at the end, some Q&A. But basically, I'm just here to amplify LGBTQ voices, mostly mine today, but so that you can sort of get a perspective and an inner view of the myriad facets that we queer people have. You know, my work in the world is very political outwardly. I speak very loudly for social justice, and my inner world is very much about nature and love and animals and birds and loving my wife. And so I'm going to share a poem or two from each one of my collections. And I'll start with my first book, Periscope Heart. It came out in 2014 with Swimming with Elephants Publications. It's called Practicing My Come Hither. I am practicing my come hither, that look that can catch your eyes in mid-flight. That look that sends a wave of light into the air that lands on your chest and reminds you that you are alive, and reminds me that I am alive. That come hither stare that calls you home to my chest, where you rest your bones on the body of my bed frame ribs, the swing of your hips, the softness of my flesh. It will bend to you. It will be moved. I am practicing my come hither, calling out into the emptiness of these dreams I keep having, where I am floating and falling at the same time. And everything is blue, and everything is water, and everything is wet, and you are there. You are always there. I am practicing my come hither. I will find you on the crosswalk of desire and mist and street lamps that name the heavens where you live. I know you are out there, and you will love me like that. Like I know there is someone to love me, someone to watch my lips like a ticking bomb, stare into my mouth as if waiting for a lily to finally open its petals to the sun, fixate on my tongue as if there is nothing more than to kiss me into life. I am practicing my come hither. So you will see the art of me and turn me into colors swirled onto canvas, the dance of me in light and shadows. And our bodies will paint the warmth of night, and our bodies will rest in the grips of what has always been waiting. So starting off a little steamy with a love poem from there. I'm going to go on to Wingspan now. Wingspan came out in 2016 by Golden Dragonfly Publications. And the cool thing about Wingspan is when you open the book, the wings open. And even though we're on Zoom and you're all muted, I know I can feel your enthusiasm right now, and you're cheering and your oohs and ahs. But I just love doing that, no matter the audience, even if it's, second graders all the way to, a nursing home. I will always do the wing thing. This is called I Hold Open a Door. This was written just months before the Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage, when Arkansas governor issued a pseudo veto on HB 1228, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. This poem is inspired by an artist named V.L. Cox. And V.L. created this art installation, and it was all of these different doors, and they were freestanding doors, and on each door it said, one was gay, one was Jew, one was Black, one was queer, all these different doors of how we identify in the world. And these doors were placed at the front of the Arkansas State Capitol. They also were at in Washington, D.C. And so these doors kind of inspired me to write this poem, and it's called I Hold Open a Door. How can you use religion to hurt another human being? Doesn't that go against your religion? How can you hold your definition of God like a gun in your hand, aiming it at the faces of the different? How can a premise of faith and morality inflict so much ugliness and suffering? This is the history of war in the world. The zealots and fundamentalists that contort words into swords and guns and missiles and drones, and my God is stronger than your God. My religion is the real religion. This pathway leads to the falling of empires, the genocides of innocents, rampages of ages disguised as religious freedom. Well, your freedom takes away someone else's freedom, burdens someone else's livelihood, dampens someone else's dreams. And if your God moves you to hate, maybe you should think about who you are following. Please separate your church from my state of mind. Please separate your church from my state of mind. The steps of the Arkansas State Capitol are covered in rainbow footprints, in the temporary applause of stonewall hands. An artist has created a series of doors displayed on the steps that starkly remind viewers of the separative and repressive injustices of discrimination. Some want to keep those doors closed, to keep out the spectrum of humanity in all of its diverse forms, to strain out all of the colors. But today, there are glimpses of movement, and the voice of progress is dying to be heard. The faint chanting rally cry of equality reaching like defiant whispers to legislative ears. And maybe the wheels of change will quit grinding backwards in this state that will surely hang itself with its Bible belt from a beautiful old tree in the 3 million acre national forest that no one will come to visit if we proclaim fundamentalism over humanity, backsliding over progress, bigotry over tolerance, hate over love. Arkansas, please separate your church from my state of mind. Some businesses will close their doors, say gays are not welcome here. Say, I won't bake a cake for your gay wedding. Say, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. But as for me, I hold open a door. I hold open a door in my chest, in my heart, and I just keep opening it. I hold open a door for all to walk through. Have a seat, pull up a chair. Let's talk about this struggle and how much it has made us stronger, but how we just don't want to have to fight anymore to love. I hold open a door. Come, wrapped in a rainbow. Tell me your love story begins with, when I met her, she kissed all the pain away. Tell me when you came out to your parents, they only hugged you longer and said, I love you. I still love you, until you believed it. Tell me what pronouns fit your genderqueer identity, and I will call you whatever you want to be called that makes you feel home. I hold open a door. You can sit down in my chest where it is safe, where it is quiet, until all this noise dies down and everyone finally sees that people are people, are people, are people, are people, not one over another. I hold open a door. You are welcome here. Come in, sit down, have some coffee, pour yourself a drink. You are not alone. I wrote you this poem. I wrote us this poem. Letter to little me about loving women. Little one, you're beautiful. Those bangs shaping the tiny almonds of your eyes. Did someone tell you that you could not fly? That you could not go where your little heart goes, in the direction of a woman's arms? Little one, you will feel the sweetest love. There will be a first kiss that builds a planet of light inside you. Keep that light, okay? Love will call you by name, but will also deny your name and even forget your name, and you will feel the deepest hurt, but you will make it through. It is all preparation. It is all a getting ready. Everything is just a process of getting ready. Protect your little heart during those first loves, but feel everything through and through. You are tender. Always stay tender. Always be tender, even when there is fire burning all around you. It's okay, little one. It just takes a bit of waiting, but your bright heart will meet its twin. She will love you. Oh, she will love you and teach you about beautiful things and take you on adventures that will become poems. And together you will plant seeds that you can witness turning into wild gardens with the patience of fearlessness. Little one, she will love you and become the air that sails underneath your tiny flapping. She will lift you to the heights where your young bright light can become a rainbow that everyone knows by name. Don't fear the military machine that screams at your flame. Don't fear the bigots and the zealots. They are playing a different game. They are people with closed eyes. Don't listen, little one. Just shine with all your heart and their voices will get drowned out. You will save lives just by being who you are. I know your feet hold tiny footsteps now, little one, but they will grow. They will become mighty. They will step into chasms that you will turn into mountains with your bright light. Oh, tiny bright light, do not fear. There is always someone who knows the sound of your song. There is always an angel who is already inside you, who is holding a name tag that says, little one's soul. You are protected. You are guarded. You are a holy beauty. Do not fear. Just be the flame that you have been from the start. You are a tiny piece of eternal art. So those are a couple from Wingspan. Again, open the book, wings open. I got a little unexpectedly choken up by that one. You know, it's interesting to think back of little you, little you, not just little me, but little you. And what would you say to that little person of all the things that they were about to go through? I went to the Corps of Cadets at Texas A&M University for college, and I was actually expelled for violating the don't ask, don't tell policy because I fell in love with a female cadet. And it was still during that time of, don't ask, don't tell. So the generals expelled me. And that was a very traumatic experience in my young life. But even younger still, looking back on 5-year-old me, 6-year-old me, I used to have that sort of bowl cut with the bangs, I was adorable. But just now getting back to thinking about that little girl, how I wish I could just scoop her up into my arms, Anyway. Next couple of poems I'm going to read are from Incandescent. This came out in 2019 with Sibling Rivalry Press. And this is a painting on the cover here. All of the books so far, Wingspan as well as Periscope Heart, these were paintings done by the love of my life, Joanne. And so I just want to say again, just look how talented she is. Don't look at me, but look at how talented she is as a painter. So she's my lifetime collaborator. And I'm just so honored that she does this for me, paints the covers of my books. This poem is called Her. And it's about the first time I kissed a girl. I might have been 10 when I realized the magnets inside me were spinning toward her. Whoever her was, she was my everything, my longing to be close, my ache to be seen, my dream to be kissed by, touched by, missed by her. Whoever her was, she was my love, and I could not help but be enamored. The feelings did not die down. They grew into silent flowers in my chest until a meadow sprung from my mouth when I spoke, until petals, only saying, she loves me, she loves me, she loves me, spilled from my lips and became my words. At that age, I did not have the word gay, did not have the word lesbian, the word queer, just this fear to explain my frame of reference around my undeniable attraction to her. There was always a her. Through the years of my youth, a too far face I could fix my heart and eyes upon, like a star guiding me out of my black hole secret. Never close enough to touch, never close enough to whisper, never close enough to be real in my arms. I was taught those fires would burn me forever, and sin was named after a woman. But I wanted her skin on my mouth so much. The first time I kissed a girl at 17, I might have been a fault line, the way I trembled, the way the earth moved all around our fresh young bodies. I remember her wild curls falling across my face, the way she laughed, the taste of her yes, the ceiling fan spinning rings over our heads, and I may have never returned to earth that day. The way she sent me hovering into the atmosphere with only the fear that this moment might not be real. And these kisses, and her cheek, and her neck, and her shoulder, and her, and her, and her moving up so close to the wild magnet of me might just be a fleeting dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was love, real love. My first love, and her name stays with me, folded into my skin. And I can remember her in poems and be right there again, two budding young flowers opening to each other's fingers, how the memories linger after 25 years. She is married now to a man, has two beautiful children, and we don't speak. And I like to think it is because there is still a part of her that remembers how I trembled. And to no fault of hers or mine, love sometimes makes strangers out of lovers. But I can write her into a poem, always, and thank her for being real. The next poem I'm going to read, I wrote in response to what happened at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, the Pulse massacre. And this is a heavy poem, so I just want you to just to know that it's sometimes when something awful and unimaginable happens, the only way for me to process it is through a poem. But I won't leave us in that space. Don't worry. I'll end with hope. This is called The Pulse of a Rainbow, for the victims of the Pulse massacre, Orlando. You might not think such a thing exists, the pulse of a rainbow, a heartbeat made of only light and color, dance expanding, arches bending across skies, a vibration that resonates through time and space and history and place. But it does exist, always has existed, always will exist and persist, even through this, the pulse of a rainbow. It is a quiet pulse, a rhythm that imbues culture, fierce and ravishing, soft butch, high femme, blurred gender lines, bears and queers, trans and boy and bi, every shade of a spectrum that can't be named by naked eyes. If only this country could see the music that we make with our lives, muted for so long with the pages of an ancient book, quoted from fundamentalist cherry-picking lips, muffled for so long against the bigoted legislations of men, silenced for so long amidst the fists and rapid fire bullets of hate, but it is still here. The pulse, the pulse, the pulse, the pulse of a rainbow, always a drum, always a pulse you can recognize when you see another rainbow on the street dancing, and suddenly you dance a little brighter inside. You shine a little louder when you look into the eyes of a stranger and know the struggle shares your names. When you know that this family is thicker than blood, and when that innocent blood is spilled, you feel it in your heartbeat, skipping with the loss, the grief, the emptiness, the stopped quick pulse of a rainbow. 49 lives. One self-loathing, homophobic psychopath opened fire and took 49 lives. And all the colors of the rainbow turned to red that night. No yellow, no orange, no green, no blue, no violet, only red. Red for miles, red flooding the nightclub, red pumping through the music, red spilling into the 2 a.m. Orlando streets, red becoming the air, the walls, the building, red mingling with other reds until just heaps of fallen rainbows lay there in the wake of one man's slaughter-wet dream. A dance floor becomes a sea of bodies and blood ankle deep. A tomb, which minutes ago was a sanctuary. And where does a rainbow go when it dies? The pulse, the pulse, the pulse. I read the news as it comes in, the body count growing from 20 to 50 to 49, because we will not count him with the innocents, with the bright-faced, beautiful souls extinguished too soon. And I read of the silence in the dead room, turning into a cacophony of cell phones, ring singing a song of harmonized panic from the pockets of the slain. And please don't let my love's name come up among the list of the dead. Pick up the phone. Baby, please pick up the phone. Please text me back. Did you get out? Are you okay? Pick up the phone. Last words. Mommy, I love you. I'm going to die. The sounds of 49 cell phones play a chorus of grief. Their interwoven songs become the music this new flock of angels can dance to as they leave their earthly bodies, rise as souls, still dancing, always laughing, singing, doing what rainbows do, shine with color. The pulse. I feel it stronger in me this morning. My heart sick with grief for these strangers that I know so well. Through the tears somehow, my colors are renewed, infused with the vibrant light of them. Their beautiful brown queer skin, making my skin more brown and queer in their names. The pulse. A drum cry of grief turned into power chanting, into the face of a country that does not see us until we die in mass, a country that hashtags prayers but votes for bigots, a country that holds tighter to its guns than it does to its gay children. The pulse, the pulse, the pulse. And I can't stop looking at their beautiful young faces, can't stop reading the details about their lives, the 49 holes left suddenly in families, 49 love stories with rewritten, twisted endings, a future wedding, now a joint funeral, the mothers, their families and friends, yes, but I return to the wailing howl of their mothers. I think of my mother, how she would bawl a new ocean. It is raining outside. It is raining so hard the atmosphere is breaking. Candlelight vigils materialize across the country. The president orders flags to be flown at half-mast. The rainbow flag has always flown at half-mast. Bridges and buildings light up with rainbows. Spires of the tallest skyscrapers pierce the night. The Eiffel Tower blasts colors into the sky. Unity through tragedy. Pride getting prouder. Cries for gun control finally getting louder. And maybe this is the tipping point we have all been waiting for as Democrats chant, "Where's the bill?" after a moment of silence on the legislative floor. How many more mass graves must we dig with the blunt end of an AR-15? The pulse, the pulse, the pulse. I sit here, safe in my home, colors burning to write a poem. I read their 49 names like a mantra, say them into the air to make them more real. Shape their beautiful syllables with my mouth to make their loss more palpable. Repeat them for the infinite times they will not be said out loud in the years to come. Their names become a prayer, a poem, a dance to every love song ever written. I become the pulse. We all become the pulse of a rainbow. Whew. Thank you. Those are from Incandescent, and Incandescent is probably my most political book. It's my most political book. It was written during the time and as a brave act of resistance against the Trump regime and what was happening and what was about to occur. What I could feel in my bones was going to be a really dark 4 years. Bear is asking if I will read What Stitches Us Together. Of course. I'm going to move on now to my latest collection, Mining for Stardust. And this is the only cover that Joanne did not paint. This was actually painted by the universe. I had to get permission from NASA Hubble Space Telescope to use this image. And it's an image of the pillars of creation in the Eagle Nebula. And so pretty cool, I think. That's literally where stars are born. So this is Mining for Stardust. And I will read What Stitches Us Together because that's what Bear is asking for. The first poem in this book was written on the first day of the pandemic lockdown, and it sort of takes the reader through that awful year that we're all trying to forget, 2020 of the pandemic, and the subsequent years that followed, but also the reckoning of the race conversation that we had in this country and that dreadful presidential election that lasted way too long, but came out with light at the end. So I will read this and I will end with a love poem and then a newer poem about gender. This is called What Stitches Us Together. There's a real beauty in that. The fabric we were going to use for people who died is now going to be used for people, hopefully, to live. A quote from Gert McMullen, one of the first 2 volunteers that started the AIDS Memorial Quilt Project in San Francisco in 1987. Leftover pieces of the AIDS Memorial Quilt are being used to make masks for COVID-19, and I knew this was a poem before I even started writing it. Something about the full circle of a rainbow. The story of these extra scraps of remembrance finding their way to faces now seeking protection. These LGBTQ quiltings coming back around to save us. And this is not the first pandemic these rainbow threads have weathered. 3 by 6 by 48,000 panels, the size of an average grave. And those are just the AIDS cases tied to faces and names, millions of beautiful humans erased. No, this is not the first pandemic these rainbow threads have weathered, but there is something in the tragic beauty of what they are stitching back together. On the news, Dr. Fauci speaks at the podium, defends our courage against extraordinary stigma, shines a light on our humanity and disparity, reflecting on the Black and brown bodies succumbing disproportionately in this current tragedy, all while standing next to a vice president who would rather pray the gay away or shock it out of us with conversion therapy. And where does a rainbow go when it dies? Right now, there are healthcare workers wearing quilted masks on their faces, these leftover blankets of memory, these precious swaths of color are being given a new purpose in this unfolding. The pieces of rainbows coloring everything golden. Maybe this gesture can stitch our country back together. Maybe seeing each other's humanity and fragility can stitch our country back together. If any of my colors could help you, I'd offer a part of my rainbow to see you through. Thanks for that request, Bear. I'm going to read a newer poem. I wrote it last year for Tupelo Press, and then I'll end with my favorite love poem. So this is called Gender is Fluid. No, actually, no. I'm gonna read the other one because this kind of gives it away. Oh, sorry, scratch that. I'm gonna read my favorite love poem from Mining for Stardust, and then I'll read the gender poem. Okay. So 2020, something beautiful happened amidst all the tragedy. After 14 years, my wife and I finally decided to get married and we got married on Zoom. She was with me, like I didn't marry her over Zoom, but our audience and our families and friends and hundreds of poets were on the Zoom meeting from all over the world. So we had a huge wedding and no catering bill. So that was awesome. We got married in front of our garden on Zoom in 2020. So this poem is called Filling Spice Jars as Your Wife. And it's the first time I got to call my wife in a poem. It seems like all my poems after this will be different. Like how they will hold, it seems like all my poems after this will be different. They will hold a different weight, like how the weight of my heart has shifted into indistinguishable float, into lifting cloud, into weightless flight tonight as the rain gently falls on the summer heated tin roof. The din of casual raindrops and warm low lights glowing and wind blowing through the house. We have all our doors and windows open. We have all our doors and windows open, and I am pouring spices into glass jars, coriander, cinnamon, cumin, ground sage, and it's hard to describe this moment within the confines of a page. Tiny hills of vibrant color and intoxicating fragrance, and you hear the cadence of my heart from the kitchen, where you build the perfect fitting slip-in shelves for our spices over the stove. Match the colors, match my colors to yours. I have all my doors and windows open to you. I have all my doors and windows open to you, and you have come all the way inside. Sat down at the table of my deepest desires and lit a fire to warm us both. The wind blowing through the house, the rain gently giving way to turmeric sunrise, and you, darling, you are my wife. You are my wife, and it's like I have been waiting my whole life to say those words. And I feel held in a way I have never felt before, to look down at my fingers dusted with ginger and thyme and see the gold of my wedding band glint and shine in the warm, low light glow. I am yours, and you are mine. Promised on Zoom in our garden of giant zinnia and hummingbird vines, sung out in the morning song of bluebirds, this union that ripples love out to the world and infinities back into us again, love. In the fine powder of these spices, ground up essence of oregano and basil, I see our love in every atom suddenly, and every cell in me finally exhales. And perhaps that is the wind. Perhaps that is the wind blowing through the house, this release of eternal searching and finding you there, calling me your forever, naming me your always, to have and to hold, till death do we part and start all over again, looking only for each other's hearts, taking my life in your hands, eternal, marrying me to the heavens, latching me to the star trail of your white dress in this orbital dance, this lift and spin, this knowing from within that all of my poems after this will be different because you are my wife. Those are from Mining for Stardust. And I read that poem every single reading I do because it's the first time I got to call her my wife in a poem. So I've been waiting a long time to do that. All right, I'm going to close. And now you'll see why I didn't want to give it away. I'm going to close with this newish poem. It's called Gender is Fluid. This morning, while putting on makeup side by side in the double mirrors of our bathroom, my wife says, "You know something crazy? When I see a person, I don't see a he or she, I see a soul. But I thought the whole time he was a she wanting to be a boy, so I used he and him when talking to him. And his sister said, this is my brother, but he really was a he, and he really was her brother." And I recall the young boy from yesterday, hair draped like light curtains on either side of his face, the black eyeliner and black nail polish painted on his long fingernails, his light crystal blue eyes that I swear saw into our souls from some distant galaxy with that kind of knowing. And I said, "That's because you care, honey. That's because you really care." The young ones are like water. They don't fit into our squares. The binary is only a limitation for their expansive expression. And we, the generations before this Z and Alpha, we try to fit them into our black and our white. We try to color them inside the lines. We cram them into confines because that is where we came from. When they, them, they are like water. They are like sun shining through mist, making rainbow. They are prismatic in their multi-facets. And I remember the boy, the girl, the they, them, he, shall, all, the they, them, he, she, all into one and nothing at the same time. And those eyes, those bright blue eyes lined in thick, dark eyeliner, as if to say, look here. Look in this mirror at what you too could be if you believed you were limitless. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you listening and holding space for these poems. Thanks again, Bear Wolf. Run over and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my God. I know I could sit here and listen to you all day long. But we only have the room for another half hour or so. But I would like to invite anyone who's here in the room with us, anyone who's in the Zoom room, if you have any questions or any things that you'd like to ask Kai or talk to Kai about, feel free to put them in the chat. I will get started if you don't mind. I have a question that I would love for you to share with us. In your poetry, it's so prevalent. The challenges that you have faced and the hurdles that you have overcome and the way that you've done that with light and love. And how do you do that? How do you maintain that light and love through all of these struggles, not just in your poetry, but even after your poetry, the struggles that I'm sure, the hurdles I'm sure you face just when doing your poetry and when putting your poetry out there? Like, how do you maintain the light and the love that you maintain through it all?
That's a great question. Thanks, Bear. And, you know, light and love sort of has a connotation of like these hippy dippy people that don't, you know, oh, light and love and light. That's not the kind of light, right? That's not the kind of light and love that you're talking about. I think you're talking about capital L light and capital L love, meaning it's on a deeper soul level. It's on a level of like consciousness. It's on a level of intention and how I navigate the world. I know that my purpose here is to bring attention to these situations and these facets of the human experience. And I lived, you know, the first half of my life in the dark, in many very dark places. And through many traumatic experiences and hazing and rape and, discrimination and Catholicism and just all the things that caused a lot of trauma to me personally. So much so that I self-medicated for a few years when I got out of college, and not in a healthy way. And my life sort of changed, honestly, when I met Joanne, my wife. And she really helped me to dig myself out of that darkness of that trauma and helped me to really rename my life, and reclaim it, and to wield a sword that can still battle against these, dark and evil things and these oppressive politics and separatism and judgment and prejudice and racism and homophobia, all those things. And I can battle those things, but I don't have to succumb to the pain of that anymore. And I'm not saying it's not painful. It's absolutely painful when 49 of my brothers and sisters get murdered, and I write a poem through that pain. But I can't, just for me personally, I choose never to leave my readers in that space of trauma, in that space of darkness, or in that heavy space. I can write about all things, all of the things that we are witnessing during this catastrophic time in our human evolution. And I wrote about the pandemic, and I wrote about, I write about politics, I write about all of these things very actively, but I will never leave you without a sliver of hope at the end, or some way to climb back out of that well that you may be in. And so it's hard some days. It's hard to get back up, because society and systems and organizations and the world and politicians and all the things sometimes will try to knock you down. And it can be very trying on your heart. And I myself have been hit many times because of my identity and because of my politics and because of how I actively present myself against hate. I live in Arkansas. I live in Arkansas. I was not born here, but I live here. I've lived here for 10 years, and my whole poetry career is here. I started writing full time when I moved to Arkansas. I was a teacher in Houston before. I taught 9th and 10th grade in Houston, and was raised in Houston, which is a very diverse population. And so to go from this literal melting pot of beauty of all these different races and religions in my neighborhood and in my schools, and then to come to Arkansas, where it's like, I'm the only person of color in the room, or I'm the only queer person in the room or in these spaces, it can be hard to navigate these spaces with that sort of responsibility, but I do it. And I do it because if I don't, then I'm taking away the voices of somebody that doesn't have the chance to be in the spaces that I get to occupy. And I recognize my own privilege for being able to sit in with, deans of universities and politicians and heads of organizations and things like arts organizations. I've worked hard to climb this ladder, but I never forget my identities when I am in the room. And I always present those loudly when I'm in the room. With anybody. So that's part of the work that I do in the world very proudly. So thank you for that question. It's my internal light that leads me, and it's the love and support of my wife that helps me when it gets really hard, and the love of community and friends like you.
Thank you very much. I just one follow-up question. What advice would you give to those of us who go through those same things, the anger and the hurt and those feelings that we want to get out in poetry, but still we want to try to avoid that dark place that is so easy to draw us in, and whether it be a straight cis male poet, or whether it be LBGTQ youth, or whoever, what advice would you give us to be able to maintain and navigate those dark spaces, but still come out of it with that light, so that we can share it with others and bring others up with us, instead of everyone falling down into that darkness.
That's a great question. Also, it's so easy to get consumed. It's so easy to become just consumed by all of, even now, even today, with what's going on in Ukraine. And, you know, we can't even almost say those things out loud because it's so painful and it's so hard to find a sliver of hope. But, you know, you can think of President Zelensky, you can think of these musicians that are putting on bulletproof vests and singing to the soldier. You know, there's always something, there's always something beautiful. There's always something that you can hold on to. I think of Mr. Rogers when he said, you know, in any tragedy or any catastrophe, always look for the helpers. You know, there's always the helpers. There's always those people that are doing something to tip the scales back on the side of goodness and light. And on another note, you know, I operate very much in a conscious awareness of like my vibration and my frequency and the energy of what I'm putting out into the world. So if you're angry about something that's going on politically and you write an angry poem, you're on the same vibration as the anger inducing situation. If you're angry, you know, two angers don't make, however you want to put that, two angry things do not make something, you know what I mean? It just adds to the anger side of the scale. So the balance just, it adds more to that side. So I'm very conscious of like how I approach things. And again, I get angry. Man, do I get angry sometimes about something that's going on, especially in our last administration. And it was very hard for me to write sometimes. But if I didn't write, and if I was silent about things, about atrocities, you know, then my silence is also a vibration, and silence can be a vibration of acceptance. And I was not having that. And so I like to think of legacy too. If somebody in 100 years picks up this book, Incandescent, you know, they can see that there was a poet that was fighting against what she believed to be a dark and evil time in our humanity and in our country. And so this book, particularly published by Sibling Rivalry Press, they have a contract with the Library of Congress, and every publication that goes out with Sibling Rivalry is put into a special vault of a rare and special collections. It's lined with red velvet, I heard, and it's in the Library of Congress. And so every book they publish goes into that vault and is protected in the library, a physical vault in the Library of Congress. And so this book came out when the last president, whose name shall not be named, was elected. And so that was my sword in the fight. And that's how I like to think of my work. You know, when someone in 100 years or 1,000 years or some alien on another planet finds these books in the rubble of what humanity left, you know, I always want there to be proof of light, proof that we were striving, that we were trying to do better. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Judd Curry, who is one of the deans here at Kishwaukee College, is asking, do you have a particular reader in mind as you write? And if so, who or what is that reader? Ooh, who or what? Good question, Judd.
Well, we just spoke of the aliens, Judd. But the readers can be, I don't necessarily think of a particular reader. I like that I strive to have my work be very accessible to anybody, more in the vein of like Maya Angelou, Mary Oliver, Joy Harjo, anyone, any civilian, any non-poet, anyone that's just, you know, might happen across this book and open it to a certain page can understand what I'm writing about, can understand the language in there. So it's very accessible to humanity. And so I write for humanity, whoever might ever come across it. Any of my poems, any of my work, anything like that, I write it for anyone, no matter what their political leanings are or whatever, because it offers an honest perspective. And I'm not trying to make anybody vote a certain way, but I'm not going to be quiet about how I feel about society or politics or love or birds or flowers. I didn't bring a lot of those poems to the table today because I wanted this to be very focused on LGBTQ life. But my poems are packed with nature poems. I'm also a master naturalist in training. And so there's many poems about birds and about flowers and nature. We live on 17 acres and have a wildlife sanctuary here. So the nature also drives a lot of my work. So I feel like I write for anyone who I would have the privilege of having them pick up my work or look at my work or read one of my poems, that they could feel a thread of love throughout. So I wrote it for you, Judd.
What an absolute awesome answer. Yes.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Judd. Great question.
I'm just curious, again, a follow-up question to that. I'm curious, and considering this program, hearing marginalized voices through poetry, and considering what you just said, that, your target audience is humanity. Have you ever experienced someone who maybe didn't see the world in this way after reading your poetry or hearing your poetry said that they heard you or they heard those voices for maybe the first time?
Yes, I have. Again, I live in Arkansas, and there are a lot of there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people here that do not share the same opinions on many different things. Even on my ability to love my wife and my right is what I'm looking for, the word I was looking for. My right to love my wife and be married to my wife. There are some here in the state that do not think I should have that right. But then they can hear, I've literally have had people hear my poems or hear me at a reading and say, I've my religion doesn't allow me to believe in that, but that was a really beautiful poem. Thank you. And good luck to you and your wife, or good luck, and so I want there to be that sort of shared humanity experience in my work. And that's why I write very openly and tenderly and authentically about love and, fear and all of the different emotions that we experience as human beings, trying to be better people every day, and so I hope that there's always room for some sort of shared understanding. Again, I host the longest running consecutive weekly open mic series in the country. So every week I have a microphone. I have a room full of community, sometimes strangers, people passing through. It's a pretty good tourist town. So there's always, someone I've never met in the room. And, I read my poems and it's an open door. It becomes an open door to a conversation, and people come up to me and want to talk or want to meet me or just say, thank you for writing that poem. I felt that way too, but I didn't have the words for it. And I wrote my way through the pandemic, and the pandemic was hard, still is hard. And I wrote my way through the loss of hundreds of thousands of our brothers and sisters. 4.4 million people by the time the book was published had been lost to COVID across the world. And that number, I didn't want those numbers to just be these numbers, so I wrote poems for the people that passed away. When we hit 100,000 here in America, I wrote a poem. And we went to these different milestones, and I wrote poems because they weren't just numbers. They were human beings with full, beautiful, scary, lovely, wonderful lives and experiences and nuances about them and their humanity. So it was part of my healing to be able to write that book and as an act of survival and as an act of memorial. So yeah, I kind of wandered there, but I hope that answered all of your questions that you did not know
Absolutely.
that you
had.
Yeah,
thank you so much. As we bring this to an end, I just want to comment, having experienced Wednesday night poetry, both online and in person, that healing extends beyond just you. That healing has gone on to hundreds and hundreds of poets and non-poets alike. And that's the very essence of hearing marginalized voices through poetry. And it's just such an honor to have you be here today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you again to Kishwaukee College, the Diversity Committee, Gender, Sexuality, and Diversity Committee for helping us put this on. Thank you for joining us. And I just, you mentioned Joy Harjo, and one of the things that Joy Harjo said that will always resonate with me, the true revolution is love. And I think you embody that. You embody that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And just for everyone out there, again, we're celebrating LBGTQ communities. We're also celebrating National Poetry Month. So with that, I'd like to close us out with one of my favorite poems by the French poet Baudelaire, who said, "One should always be drunk. That's all that matters. So do you not feel times, horrible burdens that breaks your shoulders and bows you down? You must get drunk without ceasing. But what with? With wine, with poetry, or with virtue, as you choose. But get drunk. And if it's sometime on the steps of a ditch, or in the steps of a palace, or in the green grass of a ditch, or in the bleak solitude of your own room, you are awaking and drunkenness has already abated, ask the wind, the wave, the star, the bird, the clock, all of which rolls, all of which groans, all of which sings, all of which speaks. Ask them what time it is. And the wind, the wave, the star, the bird, the clock will reply, it is time to get drunk. So you not be the martyred slaves of time. Get drunk, and never pause for rest. With wine, with poetry, or with virtue, as you choose." Thank you again, Kai Coggin. KaiCoggin.com. Please visit her website. Please buy her books. They are amazing. And just thank you. Thank you all for being a part of this today.
Thank you so much, everybody in the audience. I really appreciate you listening and holding space. And big shout out and big bear hug to you, Bear Wolf. I appreciate your energy and your dedication to bringing these voices front and center. And thank you all to the staff and deans of Kishwaukee College for helping bring this program to you today. Happy National Poetry Month, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate all of you.
Peace, love, and poetry, y'all.
Thank you so much, Bear.
Thank you, Kai. This has been amazing. You are always amazing. Thank you.
Should we